I know that Hamilton is technically a neutral site game, but this was a Toronto home game if I've ever seen one. And I have a theory that Toronto really likes traveling to the neutral site, non standard locations where there are teams because they seem to keep trying to stay there longer by pushing them to shootouts. Halifax went to a shootout as well. Unfortunately, Toronto can't score in a shootout, and that rendered this game to be a 3-2 loss to the Seattle Torrent in a shootout in Hamilton. Toronto started this game on about as wrong of a foot as you can start on. It was a big problem last season that they wouldn't start a game on time and that their first periods were really poor. And that hasn't really been an issue this season. In fact, quite the opposite. Their first periods this season have been great. But this was a rewind to the 2024 year, and Toronto started the game completely just out of it. Seattle had all the pressure. Toronto got a couple of shots on, but Seattle had all of the pressure in the first period. And letting up that pressure so early and Seattle being able to jump on them so fast ended up biting them. A little over 5 minutes into the game, Michaela Grant-Mentis wins a puck battle behind the net and throws it out front to Alexia Gia, who would throw a backhand on Kirk first, which Kirk did stop, but she couldn't keep the rebound out, and Agia put the Torrent up 1-0 very early on. Later in the period, Condis took a roughing penalty, which obviously is very unfortunate, and it's been a big problem with Toronto this year. Toronto only took 2 penalties this game, so I'm not going to rag on them all that much. I think the bigger thing with this penalty being taken is the refs not keeping up the precedent for the rest of the game, and this is something I've mentioned in a few games this year. Condis was more or less just finishing a check. Like, the Seattle player had gotten rid of it, and Condis just kind of ran up and gave him a bump. And that was called roughing, and sure, fine. This game got real feisty at a couple of times. It got really gritty. Especially, and I don't know what it is, because these two players played together a year ago. Anytime Jesse Comfer and Megan Carter were on the ice at the same time, I think they would have fought if they were allowed to. They were real, especially more so Comfer going after Carter, but they were really reaming on each other the whole game. Like, Comfer not only would finish a check on Carter, she would like keep pushing and shoving and cross checking a bit. And it was specifically those two. It was specifically Carter and Comfer. It wasn't like, I think there was some roughness over the course of the rest of the game and the rest of the teams on both sides. Absolutely there was. It got a little feisty. But Comfer and Carter were really going at it this game. And that was interesting to me. Nothing would wind up coming of the ensuing power play, but Seattle did get a couple good looks and good chances, and Kirk was lights out for Toronto this game, well, as much as she could be. She did a really great job and stopped a lot of really good chances, especially after being down by 1 and giving up that pressure early on a power play. Kirk really kept him in it. At the end of the period, though, the shots were, it's listed as 14-6. When I was in the arena at the time, they were listed at 14-4. Like, Toronto really got outdone in that first period, and I would love to know who said what in that intermission that really made him, get it in gear. But they came out swinging in the second period. Only a minute into the second period, Emma Malte picks up a loose puck in the neutral zone and comes storming in on the Torrent, passes it across to Natalie Spooner, who buries it past Schroeder, and it is now 1-1. Toronto did have one power play in the second period around the 13-minute mark when a Torrent player took a cross-checking penalty. As I mentioned, the game got a little rough. And Toronto can't score on the power play. Again, they had a couple good looks, but nothing super duper threatening. Nothing that's like, oh geez, we got goalied or whatever. Nothing you felt like should have gone in and didn't. And I looked up their stats before making this video just because I wanted to check something and be sure that their power play is as bad as I think it is. Their power play is operating at 8.7%, which is good enough for last in the league. They have had 23 power play opportunities so far this season, and they have scored twice. Fortunately, they haven't given up any jailbreak goals, so that's something, I guess. But 2 goals on 23 chances across 10 games is, like, that should be a priority for them to try and figure out. Especially since their power play was like top 3 last year. It was definitely in first for a little bit. The reason Toronto was able to get into second place was because they had a power play operating at 50%. So yeah, every season's not necessarily the same. They have a few different personnel. To drop off that far is worthy of being looked into. It would stay 1-1 coming out of the second period and going into the third. The game had evened up a little bit by this point. Seattle was still out shooting Toronto, but the game was closer. The game, through the grit and grind of it all, both teams had some good looks. Both goalies had some big saves. The power plays at this point were one apiece. So it was about as even of a game as you could look at without all the numbers being purely identical. And Hannah Baskin, very unfortunately, in her first game after signing her full standard player agreement, not just the 10-day one, takes a delay of game penalty for puck over glass. And this is just so unfortunate. Toronto is able to kill it off with the help of a couple big saves from Reagan Kirk, but they're able to kill it off. Then, a little later in the period, about 10 minutes in, Toronto has a little bit of pressure. Fast takes a big booming shot from the point, which gives off a huge rebound from Corinne Schroeder and gives Daryl Watts a wide open, yawning net for her to bury the puck in. Wham, bam, boom. Toronto has recovered. They have taken the lead. 2-1 Sceptres with half a period left to go. About 5 minutes later, nearly identical play happens from the Torrent. Big shot comes in, gets a big rebound off of Kirk. Alex Carpenter, standing just below the face-off dot, manages to put it in the basically empty net. Kirk couldn't get over in time. And the Torrent tie it back up at 2-2. And I've been ragging on them a little bit the past couple of games here. Toronto's defensive zone is poor. Like, really, really poor. They defend rush as well. There were a few times this game where the Torrent had a breakaway or a 2-on-1 or even like a 2-on-2, but still like a rush chance where they had the momentum and things were flowing their way, and Toronto was able to get in the lanes, get in their eyes, kind of interrupt their stick so they couldn't get a shot off. There are a few times this game that happened. They're great at defending a rush, but once whoever they're playing is able to get set up, they struggle so much. They lean on their goalies a lot. I love Reagan Kirk. Only Chuli has been fantastic for the Sceptres this season. It's not like you got Aaron Frankel back there. It's not Gwen Phillips. And to see the goalies have to face as much pressure as the Sceptres are putting on them night in and night out, it's just so concerning. Because obviously that's not a strategy you can get terribly far with. Especially when the amount of goals they're scoring in each game isn't particularly crazy either. Like, if you average, oh man, we're going to let in 4 goals every game, but you're able to score 6, it's not great, but it matters a little less. When Toronto's having these problems and their goalies are bailing them out constantly. I'm not saying the other shoe is gonna drop, but like it's a problem you need to get on. I really hope this is like priority 1 at their practices. You know, maybe power play priority 2. But you might get a power play sometimes. You will always spend some time in your own zone. The game would stay tied 2-2 into the end of the third, go to overtime. Toronto wins the initial face-off in overtime and gets the initial bout of pressure in overtime and spends a good bit of time in the offensive zone, but ultimately doesn't get a shot. The Torrent are able to rush back, work the zone a bit, get a shot or two, and then Toronto comes back the other way, get a bit of pressure, no shots. This is what their play has looked like a little bit in a handful of games this season, the last game notably, where they take a couple extra seconds to do everything they're going to do, which for one telegraphs it a bit, and even if it's not obvious what their move is going to be, it gives the defense more time to kind of choke up on them. Toronto needs to make faster decisions. Like they had, it's not like they were fighting tooth and nail in overtime. They had good zone time. They had the puck a good chunk of the 5 minutes, but they didn't get a shot. I think they had, 2 attempts, and I think 1 missed and 1 was blocked. They just need to be more on top of themselves to capitalize on the chances they get. There was a moment in this game, I think it was in the second period, might have been in overtime, that Jessie Comfer had a breakaway, and I think she was waiting to kind of bait Schroeder or look for a hole, and she waited too long and kind of just didn't get a shot away at all. And that really sums up what probably half of Toronto's games have been like this season, where they're waiting for the opposing team to make a mistake. They don't, and then Toronto kind of just freezes. Obviously, it stays tied. After overtime, goes into the shootout. Credit, though, to Seattle. That goal by Wilgren was mean, man. that was rude. Wilgren did the nifty little kind of deke, pull Kirk to one side, kind of one-hand the puck over and behind her. Like, that just wasn't nice. That was impolite. Obviously, shootouts are a bit weird. They're a strange part of the sport of hockey that no other sport really has an equivalence to. But Toronto can't score when they go in a shootout. Like, at all. 0 for 9? Yikes. Anyway, that's going to be it for this one. Thank you very much for watching. Click like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want more. They just got to be snappier, and they got to shake off this habit of poor defensive coverage.